Going on? How are you?
I'm fine. Sorry, I was just talking bad about the window behind you. It looked depressing.
No, does it look real bad? Like, am I
Well, it
okay
almost
here?
looks like no, like at a mental institution when you have the little window and that's the only one you have. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I guess a little courtyard out front.
No, it is a windowless room. Otherwise, Nick, it's been a tough year. It's been really hard. I'm lucky. I can use my arms. They gave me my belt back. No, things are good now. I haven't talked to you in so long.
I know. I haven't seen you in well, last year I don't count, so it's like going on
No.
3 years though.
Yeah, because I think it was Barry Rothbart his week in
Yeah,
Jesus. That was more than maybe, yeah, maybe around like three or four. That's so nuts.
that's crazy. How you
Yeah,
been?
I've been good. Yeah, I mean, I've been as good as you can be. Here, I'm Xing out of some of these high internet using things that I have here. No, I've been good. I'm back in Philly for the time
Uh,
being. So my girlfriend and I left LA about 2 months ago, I guess. Um, which, like loved LA, but it was like time for a career change anyway. Like I think, we're moving to New York soon, but when that opens up,
um,
but yeah, going to be in Philly for a little bit until then, which I'm
I'm
happy about.
happy. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
did
love
you
Philly.
record? Did you just record that live from the pandemic in Philly?
I recorded it outside of Philly, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they have. So I'm talking to you like as if you would have any idea where that is. So
I
it's
mean, I'm just picturing like Amish.
Amish is interesting. I guess it's a little north of Amish. So they have electricity. I walked in with a microphone. They're like, "You won't be needing that. We don't use that here." No, they yeah, it was like it used to be a steel town, and there's a venue there called Steel Stacks where it's outside of this factory from the 1800s. It's like crazy, and it was during the pandemic, so it was an outdoor show, and I just like recorded the thing on my iPhone, just like, oh, these are the only clips I'm going to be getting, probably for a very long time. And the guy who runs the place is like, I don't know why you're recording this. It's an outdoor show during a pandemic. Like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing it either. But it ended up being really good. It turned into an album. So yeah, that's a long way to answer your question. Yes.
Well, plus I think I listened to a couple little minutes of it. Were
Hmm.
you going all pandemic or did you do like a full on album?
It was so it was like 35 minutes, I guess. And like, I ended up doing all material that I haven't done on any of my other albums. So it was like my first show back, or no, no, it wasn't. It was my third show back after 7 months. So like for 15 years, like I started when I was really young. Like the longest I've taken off was, like so many people during this, like what, like 2 weeks maybe, like I went on spring break or something with my family. And yeah, so like 7.5 months in, first show back was fine. Like I was fine, like I couldn't remember my jokes really, which is important. And I'm told that's a part of it for a lot of people is jokes. And then yeah, second show though, it was like, oh, okay, like, you get your stage legs underneath you again, and that was the third show.
I've had the time of my life watching everybody remember how to do it. It's been so because I've seen it from like local people who would
Hmm.
do 4 minutes and be like, "Can I get off?" To like Brian Regan who's like, "Dang, I haven't messed up in 20." Like it's so weird to watch people remember how to do it, and
Yeah,
it's not one
it's
person.
it's cool to see, like you said, that range too, because it's not even, after a certain point, it's not like it has nothing to do really with experience or even talent necessarily. It's just it's just a variable that nobody nobody who's really good at stand up takes 7 months to a year off generally. I mean, I guess Eddie Murphy did it, but
Yeah, he about to take.
especially him.
I'm curious though if he comes back. I bet it's trash because
Hmm.
I mean, even when he was doing SNL and still doing stand up, he's getting up, and the fact that he hasn't gotten up, in years, you can't be good. And it's my point's been proven after COVID, where you're like, no one's good coming back.
Yeah, you still have like my experience was I'm still improv wise, like in riffing and stuff, like still as sharp as I would have been anyway, but just with material, the not even the memorization of it, but the rhythm. Like your rhythm's all messed up because if you speak to people the way that you do stand up in regular life, like you're a dickhead. You know, like that's it's not fun to be around. So you don't have that practice. So yeah, I would imagine with, I was listening to him. I don't, not to mention another podcast, but I was listening to him on WTF with Mark Merritt.
I might have heard of that podcast.
Yeah, I know you guys are big competitors. You air at the same time. um, but yeah, he was saying that like, he was in a group, like I think he was doing a decent amount of shows, Eddie Murphy was, but then, the thing hit and he's like, yeah, I don't even, like, God, that must have been so much work for him to, after not doing it intentionally for so long. I do wonder if he'll ever do it again because it's not easy. I don't know if you've seen that too, where, I know a lot of people who've been doing stand up for a while. It seems like they've been doing it as a bridge to something else, like you do stand up to get that acting gig or writing gig, which is fine, but I think that's going to show up post pandemic where, if you don't love it, it sucks. Like it's not convenient. You're out late. You're not eating well, like you're around just maniacs, it's a tough, if you don't love the amazing parts about it, like then it's a thing I see a lot of people, probably not doing.
But we're losing a lot of the amazing parts too, because a lot of the things will be coming and the hanging out and like the camaraderie and like and that
Mm-hmm.
so we had our first open mic last week, and it's like you come in, you do your set, and you get the like in out. We're keep it moving, keep it moving. So that part of comedy is almost lost for I don't know how long, but it's really like come in, do your set, get on out. So the fun parts are
Mm-hmm.
almost gone. You got to really enjoy stand up to do it at this point.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, man. It's also, I guess, the setup where it's at the beginning of this thing. It is everything that makes an amazing comedy club is what in the beginning made a terrible room like for COVID. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, what's your favorite club? You ask any comedian, it's like low ceilings, no windows, like just hot, like everybody's up on you, packed in together, just laughing, breathing. Nobody ever says breathing like before. It's like that's a good audience. I like when they breathe at me really hard. That's the perfect audience for me personally. But yeah, it is. So what's been your experience like? So what have you been doing? And because I'm curious too, I know this, like I know I'm the guest and you guys begged me to do this, but I do want to ask you personally, like, how has it been? Because, what a life change that is for you as well. You know what I mean? Like just, would you, when 6 or 7 o'clock would roll around on a Friday or Saturday, did you start like, like just your body clock going off? Like, how did you handle it?
It was weird because we took the first 3 months off, right? And that's it. And I loved it.
Right.
I was doing like yoga. I would come in the club and like roller skate around. I was like, this is the best of all time. And then in June we reopened, and then we closed again in after October.
Mm-hmm.
So that 3 months to me was dark, dark, dark. Because I was like, we're going back, and they're like, no, you're not. So that time it was hard for me because I started thinking like, man, I'd be starting a show right now. Look at me now, like eating chips.
Yeah. Yes.
But
the chip months you've been calling it. Yeah, the chip months, right?
But the hardest part for me was when we came back. I don't want to say I turned into an asshole, but I was like really mean to staff because you have to put your mask on, keep your distance. And you would have like a shift drink, you'd be hanging out talking to a friend, and I would go, move or what? Like I had no sympathy for that. And that's been my whole life at this point, of arguing with people about their mask, and like it's turned into a totally different job for me at this point.
Yeah, because I was curious asking. I want to tell one of my favorite things I've ever seen a manager do in my entire life, by the way. If not I don't know what would be number one if it's not the story I'm about to tell about you. But to your point, it's not with the mask thing. It's not a preference. You know what I mean? Like there are certain things where, you're like, oh, like I would prefer for someone not to
like frequent servers duck down in the front row. Like that I prefer.
That's it. Yes, well put. That's the perfect. That was better than any example I would have been able to come up. Thank you. I was about I was about to say people chewing with crumbs falling out of their mouth, which is not on the list of things that you're not allowed to do. But it's just off-putting. But for this, it's like God, we've been waiting so long to get this thing back that we love and means so much to us. And if somebody, either through carelessness or willful ignorance is refusing to do something and that costs us our opportunity to like bring this thing back that means so much to us, is there's no room for that right now. Now this goes to the story that I was excited to tell. So when I was, and we were talking about how long it's been since we saw each other, what if I was like, have we started yet? What if I had no idea how this worked? When do we start?
We started already, but yeah,
I know. So
wait, how does this? Are you recording it?
Who are you? Where am I? Am I in the room with you right now? How does this work? I still haven't figured out video conferencing. Who are these spies at the bottom? So can Jerry not be on the Zoom? So I would be more comfortable.
Yeah, it triggers me. Right.
It is. It's not. Yeah, I'm not on. I'm not on. So we was like I said, the last time I was at the Portland Helium, it was such a fun week, and I was there with Barry Rothbart, who's just a hysterical guy, really great dude. And there was an audience member who was there, just like, and by the way, this is an awful audience member who happened to be a woman. So like, this is not like a misogynist story at all. She was just this awful monster, and she was sitting in the front row, of course, and was so just blitzed, blackout drunk, like at like 7:30, whatever the early Friday show was. And I still have video of this somewhere, but like, so I was recording, recording for the things in the entertainment business where, it's like, oh, maybe I could get a special, blah, blah, like, so I had my camera set up in the back of the room, which I knew couldn't pick up how loud she was, because it was so far away. But she was flipping off everybody. Like, if she heard the word fuck, she'd be like, yeah, fuck. Like, she was a fan of the word fuck, not comedy or speaking. And she was just flipping everybody off. And you were like trying to like be like, hey, like you were great. You were right in front of me. I'm like, just ignore it. Normally when there's something weird like that going on as a performer, you acknowledge it, in a way that, or honestly at the Heliums, it's generally taken care of before you can even do anything. So I was ignoring it because I needed to get the tape out of it, and for the tape's sake, they didn't hear this woman like yapping and just being awful. So like, you come over, politely say, hey, like, if you're gonna be loud and stuff, it's like, or if you're gonna be doing this, we'll just put you in the back. It's okay. And she was like, I'm fine. Like, she probably said something really rude to you, and you gave her one more chance, and then she starts doing it again, and the guy she was with went to the back, so he listened, but she refused to move. So, by the way, I'm still on stage. So you did this thing. She was such a drunk where you took her martini glass or whatever, and you walked away with it, and she followed it as if you took like a dog's toy away from it, and she followed you out of, and you put it outside the room, and then just shut the door on her. And it was such a perfect way where you weren't an asshole. You took care of a situation in a way where you realized like, oh, this is an animal that I'm dealing with. Yeah, it was the most tactful. Like, it was one of my favorite things I've ever seen. I was dying laughing in my head where it's like, this guy just had to treat this person like a dog. You took their toy away. Like, that's what she wanted. She wanted the martini, not the stand-up experience.
No, it's weird that I've been in maybe 5 years, so now I'm about to hit 10. Oh
wow, congrats.
Oh yeah, thanks. Last week we had you can't sit more than 6 people in a party at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a group of people, and a group of people that were all together, but they would like walk and talk and walk, and it's just having patience with people to be like, can you not? Can you please? Can you stop? Can you not? And it's I almost felt bad for the lady. Like, you don't know what you're doing. You're just losing it. Like, I felt bad for these people last week where you're like, this isn't for you. You have nothing else to do. So it's like dealing with these people with compassion, even though you're like, I can't stand you. If I met you on the street, it'd be a rumble.
Yeah, it's like, you're lucky I am paid to be here. Or you're I have like, yeah, my I put this place on my tax returns. So I can't behave like I would generally behave in this situation. But no, it is just the COVID wall. I'm so interested in, the club aspect of it too, where you do have variables that you don't have in a lot of businesses, in that people have paid to be there, but now, like, which gives them entitlement, but might be a strong word for like for most people, but some people do feel entitled, where this is now my privilege to be here. Like, you are privileged to have me here, and I'm going to behave the way that I want to behave. And in a it's hard enough in normal times, but then you add the safety aspect of it, and it's like, Jesus, hopefully that's making more people act better.
I think it is, but there's still some people who, I think entitled is the perfect word, where they feel like I can do whatever I want. I'm here. I paid my ticket, and
Hmm.
nothing pleases me more than letting people know that I don't ever want to fucking see you again, and you can leave. Like, you could
Yeah.
take your $54 that you've only paid once because you never bought tickets before, and we'll be fine. You can go ahead and bounce.
Hmm.
And the looks on their face, like this
But
isn't,
my leverage, my leverage.
the problem with that though is you have to make very careful word choices, because if I tell someone, well, fuck off, then
Yeah.
all they write Helium, this guy told me to fuck off, and they're not gonna say, I was just laughing. So you have to be very careful of being like, please leave, as opposed
Yeah.
to say to them.
And you're right, language, because I would imagine language can take something from I am the manager here to I am like your adversary. You know what I mean? Like, because it is a thing where, like, oh, you're in my, this is from your point of view. You're in where I work. You're in my home right now, and I will kick you out of my home. I have a right to do that. Like, but people, especially when you're drunk, like, they could perceive it, if you use the wrong word, as, oh, this person's like fighting me right now. You know what I mean? Like, is that a thing? Or
I mean, like, the people I had to kick out last weekend, I go, man, I hate kids. They drive me nuts, because they were like 22 or whatever.
yeah.
So when they type, a review, and they're like, and then the manager said he hates kids. It's like, all right, everyone's on my side. So it's not even, I don't care about like we can fight if we have to go to it. But I just want to make sure that when you write your review or you write an email and you go, and then he said, man, I wish this person would shut up. Like, okay, yeah, you made me the good guy again.
Yeah, I wish you would shut up. I would. Yeah, I'll comment under that review. I really was wishing you would shut up. And also, I hate kids. I thought you were talking about, like, it seems like for some reason this guy had a nervous breakdown and was talking about like 5 and 6 year olds. Like I hate children. Like, obviously you were talking about people in their early
I'm
20s.
like 22, and
Yeah.
me and Alicia were walking up the stairs, assistant manager, and I go, man, I hate kids. I sure hope they find a place to be, like, because
Hmm.
children drive me, and I said that all the way up. So then when they're like, oh, this place sucks, they call me a kid. You're like, yeah, you're a kid. Like, I've had people tell me they were gonna ruin me on TripAdvisor. I don't understand the power that people think they have. You know what I mean? It's especially when you get kicked out of a showroom and people are clapping, like, get out of here.
Yeah.
No one's
That's That's when I feel my most powerful, is when I have to say a phrase like, I'm going to ruin you on TripAdvisor. Like, that is the lamest thing I've ever heard in my entire, like, I will, you'll never work at TripAdvisor again. You can't show your face on TripAdvisor. It's humiliating.
the bad part about it too was it was during an open mic and there's a bunch of comics around. So
Hmm.
these people were telling me this, and then all of a sudden it's like hyenas laughing, like ah, and they just get more and more upset because I don't know. I think people again are trying to find their power in the situation, and you really don't have any.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Up like that. Actually my first, so I haven't done an indoor show since March like 8th of this year. No, I'm kidding. What if I was like trying to set this up? Like, dude, I haven't done an indoor show in weeks. No, I haven't done an indoor show in over a year. So, I'm like interested to see the dynamics, like, of, like, of how different, and it honestly may not be different at all, especially from like at a Helium, where you guys do such a good job of taking of, so we don't have to worry about it, the comics, where there's enough, the perfect thing, just go up, do your act, get off the stage, and like let the business handle the rest of it.
I mean, it's been. I'm excited to hear actually when you get back on inside shows. It's been it's been fun lately. When we first reopened, it was kind of a dark cloud, and people had to remember how to be an audience, and we weren't getting
Hmm.
that many people out. But now it's like it's popping again. It's hard to
Nice.
explain, but like when you're like, and a joke hits and it kind of pops the room open. Like we finally are starting to get to that again.
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited to. Yeah, it's crazy. It's um I was looking at an old clip from like my last shows, like my last indoor shows, so which were in San Diego, where it's been interesting too, where as like careful and like shut in as I've been during the pandemic, like I have like been around a lot, like where we would fly to see our parents somewhere, but like locked down for 10 days or 14 days, whatever it is. So it was very expensive and time consuming, but we've been, going around, and it has been interesting where living in LA for most of this thing, there's been nothing, absolutely nothing. Like masks on hikes, like you're alone on a mountain, we're all wearing masks, you know what I mean? Like there's nobody around, nobody can hear you. And then I would be in like Philly, for instance, and Philly's been great actually, for as much shit as people talk on us as like a people. Do you know what I mean? Like Philly has maturely handled the pandemic for the most part. Then we were in Ocean City, New Jersey, which is like more of a like not conservative. I don't know is the right word, but like they were more like no one was wearing masks at all. And then my parents live in Charleston, South Carolina, and that's its own fucking thing. So, it's been interesting seeing the perspective of people where if you're in one extreme, you're like, fucking everybody's wearing, like, nope. Actually, if you're in one extreme in LA, you're like, nobody's wearing masks. But then if you're in another extreme like South Carolina, you're like, everybody's wearing masks. But it's actually, I think I'm just rambling at this point. I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But I've been around, Nick, is what I'm trying to say
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I almost wish that. So I've talked to comics, and Oklahoma's been open pretty much this whole time,
Yeah.
and they say it doesn't feel at all different down
Mhm.
there, to where there's no remnants of a global pandemic. So
Right.
I'm jealous, I guess, of it. I mean, I'm glad I haven't caught COVID, knock on everything, but
Hmm.
I'm almost jealous of the fact that they got to kind of keep moving, and we're trying to like pick up the pieces again. And we still have like 100 people max in our showroom, which is usually 275, and all the distancing stuff, and just trying to get back to it.
Yeah, but a hundred's great. Like it's God, from what we've had, yeah, I mean, unless I guess you're in like in Oklahoma or a place like that that never really shut down. But yeah, I remember I went on a tangent that wasn't entertaining. But back to the thing I was originally going to say is that when I was one of my last shows was good, perfect, perfect. Sorry, Jerry keeps texting me. Fuck, amp it up, he says, amp it up, and I don't even think that's an industry term. But I so I one of the last shows was in San Diego, which is in Southern California, which tends to be, like an incredibly like liberal area. But San Diego is surprisingly not as liberal as a lot of people would think it is. Like there's a big different, like big, and I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but like it's not what you generally would project on like a city. So I was doing one of my last shows there because I'm like, oh, it could be fun, a year later to post like one of my last clips, and it was like a clip where I was like, oh God, like, are we out of our fucking minds? Like we're all gonna get, like we're a bunch of dead people. What are we doing? Like this is the worst idea. Like, why are we doing this? I'm like, you know what? I maybe give it another few years before you post that, just because it's like it was so like not spot on, but it's like, gee, this was right before Rudy Gobert touched all the microphones. Like the day before.
Yeah, that was the night.
That was the night, right? It's so funny that guy, despite being one of the greatest defensive players of all time, is just the COVID idiot for the rest of his life.
It's so sad because if he didn't touch the mics, it'd be no problem. Or if he
Hmm.
didn't have COVID, it'd have been no problem. But the fact that you like bongoed the mics
I
That's
know.
all I think about.
It's it's crazy. The same like wingspan and like body that's great for blocking shots made that so much more offensive. Like him touching, it's like this guy's coordination is unbelievable. The fact that he was able to give all 30 of these microphones COVID in 3 seconds, it's unbelievable. This guy, no wonder his hand-eye coordination is incredible.
Top tier.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh shit. Full introduction. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, welcome to, or thank you for listening to Center Stage. We're here with Blake Wexler. Um, what can I say? You have 3 albums out right now.
Three stand-up ones, and then one I did with Todd Glass where I saved 12 years of voicemails that he left to me, and we released them. And it's like I like, I mean, obviously I'm proud of the stand-up ones, but that one, like, I haven't heard anything like that ever, and I don't know what mental issue I have that I saved all those. That can be addressed at another time or today if you'd like. But yeah, it's a really cool thing. Like I started saving voicemails from him when I was like 15 or 16. Met him at Helium in Philly, and yeah, he was like helping me out, like, in the beginning with my like giving me advice and stuff as a young comic, and then we became good friends like recently. So we released that as an album. So yeah, 3 stand-ups and one whatever the hell that is.
Pure entertainment. And then you're recording another one, right?
Yeah, so we're doing a recording for with Helium where so basically, I mean, we can go like way I mean, so essentially what we're doing is that, like, XM Sirius is like a great, outlet for comics, and it's a thing where I haven't been able to get my stuff on there either because I self-released and didn't know how to do it, which is like great. Like I would recommend actually all comics to self-release unless you do it with like Helium, which is really artist friendly. And then I did another album with a label where they take 50% basically of all of everything. So it's a thing where, and I don't know, hopefully this is interesting, like the business aspect of it, but it's the kind of thing where it doesn't, a deal like that, and Helium's deal is so much, it's like night and day, like with that. So but that was the standard for like labels where they would take half. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to pay for the album, they have like publicists and stuff. But the thing that I learned is that media outlets won't give a shit more about you just because someone who has publicist in their email like sends them an email. You know what I mean? So it was all stuff that I could have done anyway. So now I just don't promote that album. So like it's material where I'm like, oh, like I really like this material a lot, but like, why would I promote this when I can promote other things that I get like a lot more money from? So, but yeah, it's a cool thing where it's like really fun to partner with Helium on something like that, just because like I literally grew up, as a 15, 16-year-old in those clubs. I don't know if they were legally allowed to have me in there, but they let me in, and I behaved myself. But yeah, it was so I'm excited to do that, and we're gonna shoot it. We're gonna like put a little 3-camera shoot up just so like it's so hard to get good video, and I've been doing stand up for a while, and it's like people are always like, why don't you have more clips online? And it's because, sometimes you set up a camera in the back of a Portland Helium and some monster in the front row, it's always flipping it off. And it's like, oh, that's not good for visuals. It's a little distracting. So literally, yeah, you were, Nick, the star of that video, not me. So, but yeah.
There's a couple I should release, but
But it's going to be a cool thing where like I haven't like also like I'm like a big sentimental person, and after this awful and hopefully like it's gonna like the recovery from the pandemic is gonna keep going the way that it's going in a positive way. But it's like shit, I've done stand up 3 times in over a year, so it's gonna be cool like, oh, this is the first headlining gig back, and I'm sure there's going to be funny moments where I literally completely lose track of what I'm saying or have no idea what a punchline is. And I'm sure there'll be cool moments too where, I think that this pandemic for me as a comic has been in a lot of ways good too, where you start caring less about you stop comparing yourself to people, like you stop being like, you just do you. I mean, that sounds so cliche, but it's like, oh, I'm just do what I'm good at. and who cares? Like, don't think about, oh, or is this network looking for this? Is this audience looking for this? It's like, it is what it is, so fully commit to what you're doing. So I'm excited, to kind of take that next step, stand up wise. And it's going to be cool to do it, hopefully start doing it on that show.
And then it's May 5th in Philly, right?
Correct. Yeah. Cinco de Mayo. Sorry, I'm trying to translate this into all the languages, by the way. So if you can give me another few minutes, I have Latin as well queued up in French. I don't, but that would have been a minimal level of prep that I could have put into this.
I would have quit. I'd have just stopped. Like I'm too deep in the water. I can't run in this. It's too.
I'm psyched for it.
I'm glad to have you on because I knew you started young in clubs. I didn't know it was that young.
Yeah.
But as far as growing up in clubs, how has that kind of changed how you view clubs? Because most people come in when they can drink or when they're 23 or something like that. But to come in as a young person, I mean, how did that shape the way you have a relationship with comedy clubs?
I mean, I like it's weird. You don't want to be like too like just romanticizing it too much, but it's just a thing. It was like school almost, where it's like going, but fun. Like it's like going to fun school where at night I got to be around, a lot of my friends were and still are like 15, 20 years older than I am, you know what I mean? Which is very strange because like when I was 15, comics are, I don't know, like the comics there were in their mid 20s or, like that's when normal people start doing comedy. So that my social group where I would be telling my friends at high school, we'd be like 16, 17, couldn't even fucking drive yet. And I'd be like, yeah, I was talking to my friend, Ed. And it's like, oh, Ed, like, who's Ed? And you look him up online. And it's like, this guy's in his fifth. This guy's 3 or 4 times older than you. What the hell? Is this guy? What is this? Who are you hanging out with? So, so that was a weird thing where it does like also references as a kid where, so many of my cultural references would be coming from like grown men and women, so it was weird where some of my first like shows where I was a big fan of like Lewis Black, and I was a big fan of like all these Greg Giraldo and all these comics, and they would have like an angrier or harsher performance style, and when you first start you tend to take on the personality of your favorite comics. But for me, I was like a 16-year-old kid from like an upper middle class area, and I would have this anger in my performance. It's like, this kid has nothing to be angry about. Like, this guy was given every advantage. Why is he? But it was about subjects like the SATs, and like it was like, oh, these tests. It's like, what the hell is this?
Too long.
Yeah, exactly. It's like oh, verbal. I'll show you verbal. Fuck you or whatever. I know, like it's just it didn't make any goddamn sense. But in terms of comedy clubs, it was funny. I did, I have such an affection for them, but I would like build up. So starting that age, like I would build up like bad habits sometimes because like when I was young. So for instance, like when I turned 21. I like went my whole life, not like drinking, for instance, like, just you couldn't get like alcohol. Sorry, that's a train. You could not get alcohol. And then I'm in a place where you get it for free, and also while doing this really fun thing in a social setting. So I think like when I was younger, sometimes the line between like, this is a job and this is a bar, like it sounds very obvious, but when you're in it, it just didn't, like certain things like didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
But no, I was thinking, I've had this conversation with some comics. I don't think the normal person knows how blurry that line is. Because when you go, right. I'm just going to a comedy show or a comedy club, I'm having drinks, I'm having fun, and even the waiters, you don't really think that they're working, or the server, like, whatever. But it's a job, and even the person on stage with the Bloody Mary or whatever they're drinking still is technically working. So
yes,
you can't, you can't grab somebody's ass, you can't piss on the floor, like that will get you fired. Now, if you're just out at a comedy club,
Nick, I did not do that, by the way. Let me just say, I did not piss on floors or grab any. This is a hypothetical person that he's talking about right now. Thank you. Go ahead.
But I mean, if you're just going to a show, yeah, you can do whatever. And people, but when you're a comic at a club, you're technically on the clock, right?
Right.
And those rules apply to you.
And it's interesting. That's a great point too, where it's also if you can handle it, okay to be drunk and perform. Like, you know what I mean? Like you see a lot of comics and, but I don't like obviously like recommend it for almost everybody, but you do see comics where it's like, God, one night I saw this comic, they had a couple drinks and it was like one of the best shows I've ever seen. Like some people, well, it's just like being social where you need to know your limit where, I've talked to comics where it's like mine would be there's a point where the performance starts suffering. Does that make sense? So it's like, oh, I could have two drinks and obviously it would be fine. You know what I mean? But then it's like, or if it's three or whatever, but then once three happens, it's not like you're entering a store as a paying customer and you like they're sold out of a shirt or something, like because you didn't pay to get into the store and then they don't have the shirt and you're like, well, fuck, now I'm out $35 plus drinks. It's like I paid to see this person and they're drunk, they're not sharp, and there's nothing worse than, and I've done this throughout my career. Like there's nothing worse than watching a comic like who doesn't realize you're watching a drunk person talk at you, not a stand-up comedy show. Does that make sense? Like, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
I don't think people realize that they're doing that. You know what I mean? Because you're drunk, you're like, yeah, whatever. And you're skipping over punchlines. And we had a guy fall. I mean, the stage isn't high here, but he fell off one. And you're just like, oh my God. And
yeah,
then,
but it's high enough. it's high enough that that's dangerous.
but I mean, so I'm trying to think like when I've had jobs and I'm like, all right, well, this is a job, this is a job. And then I come to a comedy club. But if the first job I ever had was a comedy club, I'd be like, oh, I can say cunt to anyone. I can say it at work. It's no big deal. And then you go to, Baskin and Robbins and you say it to your manager and you're fired.
Yeah, right. 31 cunts is what I call that place. I had some bad ice cream one night. No, that is a really, really good point where it's just it's such a thing where it's not even like, hey, no drinking or like, hey, no socializing where, you're using like you're using the word fuck, like with the people who are paying, you know what I mean? Like with your boss, I guess there's no real boss, but like, if I'm in a comedy club, like if I'm doing a weekend in, Portland, like you and I are like coworkers for the weekend, and like we can say like fuck shit, like literally within the first few sentences where any other business that would be weird. You know what I mean? Like you would ask, like, or yeah, it's such an odd thing where you really, I guess that would be, and you can still have fun. Like, you can still have drinks, like just get drunk after your set and don't be a dick. You know what I mean? So,
most people can accomplish it.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So yeah, but no, to your point, yeah, with comedy clubs, it's just, I can't imagine there is just something fun about doing it where it is just a room specifically set up for stand-up is really cool where, I love doing alternative rooms, obviously, and there are some comedy clubs that even ones that are run like shit, it is still cool where you're like, oh, this is a place only for stand-up, and these are the Helium clubs that I was referencing there that are run like shit. So it's the one no, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I love them.
One, this actually leads me to a question because I've never thought about it because I've never, this could be me snitching on myself. I've never had, but have you come across managers of comedy clubs who like hear you tell jokes or whatever, and then they want to be friends with you like, hey man, what the fuck's going on? Like, because I have certain access to comics that most people don't have. And so if I'm hearing you tell a joke about, yeah, my girlfriend, she blows me funny or whatever. And then I'm like, hey, what about getting blown? Like, have you ran across those managers who are like, fuck any lines, I'm crossing it because, oh, it's a comedy club, it's fun, we're having a good time.
Yeah, no, that is, by the way, you have a sterling reputation except for your oral sex talk that you do all the time. So it is a thing where just like, he's great at everything else, just let him get it out of his system.
I gotta know how everyone's getting oral sex, man.
No, yeah, it is. No, but you do have like the best reputation, sincere statement. And but no, in general, I have like no barriers and it's like an issue. So like I'll let someone in like that where I'll just let them do it, even if it drives me or I'll just ignore them. Like I'm very rarely confrontational until it's like a snapping situation where it's like, oh, Blake, if you just said something 6 times ago, this wouldn't have escalated to this point. But like, it's never. I've had room managers just not even like at worst be annoying, like, and not even really annoying, just like, oh, I would rather not be around this person for a minute, like, but never anything that there's one club owner that like has created such an awful environment at the comedy club. Like, I can email you this afterwards. What if if I was like, I don't even know why I'm not saying it on here. It's like, what do I like want to work there? You know what I mean? Like but I guess, just for relationship reasons, it's just the guy is just such a bad owner, and like to the point where even when he's not there, the staff like literally says to you, hey, just so you know, like the guy, like the owner's a piece of shit, like he's an awful guy, like, and we'll tell you stories where it's just a thing. And I don't blame them because they have to be there all the time, but like just an owner in a way where I go to show up, and at this point in my career that I'm talking about, and like now honestly too, I can't turn down headlining work generally, you know what I mean? Or there's a very small percent that I can be like turning down, and this was a place where I'm like, God, it was like such an easy place to get to. Everything about it was perfect, but the owner. And I'm like, I honestly am dreading coming here. You know what I mean? Like this place that I'm talking about. And it has nothing to do with the audiences. It's literally just almost like a specter, like no matter what, it's like, I don't know when this guy's going to snap. I don't know what fucked up, but you hear him saying like fucked up things to people who are making him a lot more money than I would, and I'm like, I don't know. The guy already always treated me well, but I don't know what the hell he's going to do, and you don't want to be looking over your shoulder every 5 seconds. Like, is it going to happen? Like, when is the awful thing going to happen this weekend? Because it's hard enough.
Yeah. Oh, what a horrible situation to be in.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to be there next week. He gave me a 10% bump. This is how little self-esteem I have. Listen, he gave me a guest list of 5 people, so I will be back there this weekend, and it's going to be great. You should come out.
Yeah, it's good times.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna run through. Have you been to all the Heliums?
I've been to Buffalo, Philly, Portland, and it might only be those 3.
You haven't been St. Louis, Indianapolis, Good Nights, or Bananas?
I've also headlined Good Nights, and I forgot about Good Nights because it's a separate name, and that's the only reason why. But I had a great time. Good Nights was actually one of my favorite shows.
Okay, wait. Sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
About these clubs, so we're gonna rank them 8 being the best, 1 being horrible, never go back. So not like in a row, but 8, there's nothing they could change about this club. 1, everything could change about this club.
Yeah, perfect.
So we'll start off with Raleigh. Good Nights, 1 to 8. How do you feel about it?
I'm gonna give it an 8, and also I'll give it a 7. The only thing I would change is I wouldn't have like a roof on it. Like I would take the roof off. I just have the worst notes. Yeah, so that's the bit that I'm gonna do in this. So 7, no roof.
Yeah. Buffalo.
Buffalo, I would like. So Buffalo, I thought I would give like a 1-2 because I found that they made the audience stop talking when I was on stage, and I prefer a more immersive experience when I'm there. So I found that someone yelled, "You don't even make any fucking sense" at me, and they told him to stop. They kicked him out, and I actually they were helping. The heckler was helping.
They were the one person who was actually helping the show.
Yeah. I find hecklers are always helpful. So 1.
Yeah, 1 for sure. Portland, what do you get? 8 to 1.
Let me see. I don't like walking up steps, so 2.
I got it.
Oh, and I don't like local art, and I found that you had some local art on the walls, so
that's
strike
gone.
2.
That's gone. We got
then 3.
And then Philadelphia.
Philly, let's see. I found that okay, so this is, I would say, recently an 8, but when I was 16, I didn't make it on the open mic list 2 weeks in a row. So for that reason, a 7.
Let me ask you
I'm
about
sorry
that.
if I ruined your segment. I can give you real numbers if you like.
No, it's mostly like how to get stories anyway. But open mics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about them? I guess I'm sorry because it's a broad general question, but I mean, there's no other form like this, where like if let's say we're guitar players, we could practice and do our own shit, or if we're doing paintings, we could practice and do our own shit. But you need open mic so bad, and it's impossible to get everybody on. Like how? I mean, it's the worst question I've ever asked. But I mean, what are your thoughts on the open mic situation?
I've been deeply offended by this, and I'm calling my father. I'm going to zoom my father into this so he could speak to you on my behalf of which is how I handle things like this. No, I would I think so. The Helium mics, and I think the only other place I've ever heard with this compliment is the one in is Acme as well. Is that the open mic is like a not a good show, it's at least a good show generally, like a weekend show it can be, which is crazy because an open mic is wild. Like it honestly should be illegal in some places how crazy these things can be where, I've been lucky enough, like, the past couple years where like I haven't really like I don't really do them much anymore, but like I don't consider a Helium or like an Acme open mic like an open mic. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah, 'cause we don't have like puppeteers and fucking lunatics.
yeah,
Really.
but it is well, that's not necessarily true. I have seen puppeteers and fucking lunatics. I hate to disagree with you, but I have 100% seen those. And Helium mics.
So bad.
but the thing is that like that's generally the rule, not the exception with open mics, where the Helium does a really good job of, or at least the one in Philly that I've seen, where of giving people shots, like of giving newer people who it's their first time doing stand up, like giving them an opportunity to do it. But say there's 21 comics on, and to your point, how many people how many people sign up to Portland, Mike? Like like when things are normal, like on a
When normal, we might reach up to 80,
and you can put on 20 at most.
25 at most.
Yeah. So you have it's 80 people. There's 25, and then there's a certain amount of allotted slots to people who like regular performers there. Like people who work weekends.
Call me in and be like, "Hey, can I come work out?" So
Yeah.
that is
So it's like
basically 15 spots for 80 signups.
for 80 signups. Then you have the people who don't work, but and you're like, oh, I've seen this person before. They're funny. Like I don't know if they're there yet, but let's keep giving them the opportunity to develop. So like a club like Helium, which they're not in the markets of like LA or New York, where like New York's and LA's it's an established comedian market or city. Like it's for like when I like was living in LA, I'm submitting my name on the same email like with like Patton Oswalt and like Sarah Silverman and stuff. So like I'm the person in that situation who's like the brand new person on an open mic in Philly or like these Heliums, but I've been doing it for like 15 or like there's some like standard deviation, but you get what I'm saying. So with Helium, I would imagine so you need to develop. It's almost like like a baseball farm team situation where like you have like your like guys in the majors who like you want to keep getting reps, like they need to practice too, but then you need to develop new talent and then find like talent that you haven't even seen yet. So and there's only X amount of spots to do that. Also, these people are crazy and you just can't win. People are going to blow the light where you already have a long show by the nature of all the comedy. And sometimes, doing a 3-minute set and sticking to your time, it's tough, but you got to do it, So it's really tricky. Or like, you could have someone who they're funny, they're going up, but the person before them just is nuts. They brought the puppets on stage. Like you had to cut their mic, like flash the lights like literally turn off the lights like in the entire comedy club. And then they have to follow that. So, but I always do forget how crazy open mics are, even the best ones. So you guys run the best ones. And even those, it's like, just like something will happen at it where I'm still talking about it 7 years later. You know what I mean? Like it's like you won't believe what this person thought was okay to say in public, or do.
Well, I've gotten lucky that I've been able to, and I don't even know if I've ever told the local comics this, but I'll try to fuck them up sometimes. Where I'm like, all right, let me put this person behind someone who's named like Pink Gravy, because I know Pink Gravy is not be funny and he's gonna suck. and now can you like bring the show up? And I try to almost
Right. Right.
boot campers to where I'm giving people more skills to be like, all right, let me work around this. And so that's
Yeah.
also I'm like,
See, I would trust you to do something like that because you know what you're talking about. But yeah, like I do mean that. Like you know what you're doing, where you wouldn't doom someone or bury them. You know what I mean?
oh,
Like, but
that's
you
what you
challenge them.
right, right.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Where whether or not like they're going up after Pink Gravy, because during a club experience, Pink Gravy could be a maniac in the crowd. It's like how do you, or like maybe the comedian before them like had a snap set, like or something. So there are variables like that, and also like it's cool too. Like I don't know if you ever do this, but I've seen people put up like a newer comic after like a more established one, and it's like that's easier to do in
Yeah,
a
yeah, good room.
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting where I think all that's good. And I think to trust, that's the thing about, you know, great clubs like Helium, where they, I'm, it's in my however many years, 12 years, 13 years, like doing like Helium, like the employees are always really cool. There's never anyone who I would ever just like I'm excited, like I was excited to see you today. Like in what world would a comedian be excited to see like a room manager? You know what I mean? Like general like but that's like it's just in a general sense of a comedy club, but like I was excited to see you, like like I talked to Jerry the other day, like who's like this. I don't know if people know who Jerry is. I barely know who he is. The man has misrepresented himself to me for years, but I, um, but yeah, it's always people who have their shit together. Does that make sense? Where comedy is it's very rare that you have someone with their shit together, and it's incredibly refreshing because trust is such a big part of it. And if I go to a Helium, I trust that I know what I'm walking into, which is I think performance wise almost half of it. That all right, like I can rely on whatever it is that I do as a comic because I know that the bad variables are going to be as minimal as literally is possible,
Right.
and so that's the thing with Helium, where it's like when I went to Raleigh, like I haven't done a ton of shows in the South, but I don't even consider Raleigh a Southern show because it's like, and I mean in a positive way because I've done every show I've done in the South has been great, but like I'm like, oh, this is a new experience for me doing a show in the South, but I wasn't nervous for that new experience at all because it was Helium owned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I mean we could kind of get in trouble with it because we are, I guess, clicky is the word, but like people who come around and don't fit into that really don't last. And
Yeah.
so when you have a nucleus of cool people, or people who kind of get it or understand it or care about it, the people who don't are almost kicked out very quickly.
Clicky is only a term that's used if you're not good at what you're doing, where because you guys are good, it's like, oh, it's a well-run business. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So now this segment is for you specifically.
Hmm.
But so May 5th, you're recording. What are things for
Hmm.
you? You already have three, but what are things for you that make a recording perfect? Or what are things that you need where you're like, this will make it successful?
Uh, Biggest thing is that I've learned from my first one to now is understanding what makes you great, where I think before coming up, and there's a lot of benefits to starting early, but there's a lot of like there's a couple of disadvantages too, where I've been so plugged into stand up and the people that I've known are like that or that I've followed throughout the entire thing tend to be not old school, but it's my peers were older than me. So I would get a lot of advice, which is very, very nice. Like as a kid, people give you advice all the time, but you would always hear, especially when I lived in Boston, like to be what stand up is supposed to be. Does that make sense? Where it's like stand up is supposed to be, it has to be like a tight 5 minutes. You know, if you're doing like a recorded set, whether it's for TV or, you know, like an album, it's like it needs to be your best material, tight material, like blah, 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 you know, like show off your writing or whatever. It's like, oh, you need to do whatever the like whatever fucking advice they're giving. And there is some good advice there, but it's also like I'm like, oh, for me, what makes me just me personally a good stand up, hopefully, is that I riff and I'm in the moment a lot. And to do only material and not and take my riffing away, it's like, oh well, now I'm literally putting one hand, like fighting with one arm behind my back, and it's like, then what? Then this is just a mediocre comedian. Like I turn myself into a mediocre comedian, you know. So I think the first, and I'm proud of all those albums, but it's like, I think my biggest thing is don't afraid to be in the moment. Obviously, have a goal of, you know, like, oh, do I want to work cleaner on this one? You know, like, or do I like you have a trajectory, you know, your jokes and stuff, but don't be afraid to be in the moment too, because that brings the whole performance up and you can edit it. You know, like if I say something and I riff and it's not good, or if it's a thing like, oh God, that's hilarious, but you can't see what I'm doing because it's an audio recording or something, you know, like maybe it was like riffing on something in the room. Just do that and then edit it out because it's going to bring up the whole, you know, like you don't want to seem like you're up there doing a rehearsed thing. Like it wants to seem natural. And for me, the way to do that is to be, is just to be natural with it. So I think also trusting like the engineers and whatnot, where show up, make sure whatever it costs, like if you're paying for it out of pocket, like pay extra so you don't have to. Because God, the worst fear in the world would be you're like doing this recording, you've advertised it as a recording, oh, your fucking mom's in the back, you know, like just, and then the guy comes over the God mic and is like, oh, we don't have any audio or whatever, you know what I mean? It's just trust it and then you don't have to think about it. And if it happens, it happens. But at least, you know, you put your bet on the right people to make it like it would have happened to anybody. So, yeah, just don't even think about the recording. Just, you know, try, just like don't fuck around, obviously. But, you know, at the same time, just be natural, take it really seriously. And, but also, you know, just treat it like a show. Just treat it like a great show and not this big thing.
That's a man who's done them before. That's
Cool.
what you sound like. You know what I mean? Like, it's great advice. Also, I
Thank
got
you.
time to apologize to Natasha and Moshe because I lost their podcast one. So that's the worst thing that could happen. Like they did a live podcast. I was like, oh, it sounds good. And then I go to send it and it had disappeared.
I think I knew that happened and I didn't know that was you, but that's hilarious. But that's not your fault, you know. Like but that's one show, you know, so that's not your fault.
Also, they did have a publicist who should have had a backup. You know what I mean? I don't want to put it out on there, but
Do it.
I can't. If I see him, I'll run away. I can't face him to this day.
If you get nothing else out of the show today, a publicist is not a real job, and it should not be respected, and it ought not exist.
Oh, and this is when I tell you I'm going into publishing. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the last thing we're gonna do, and then we'll get you up out of here. Again, thank you so much for your time, man. I can't even tell you how I am to see you and get to talk to you. But we're gonna
Me too, man. Yeah, I miss you, buddy.
Yeah, it's been too long. We got to get you back. But we're gonna get notes from a producer. So we're gonna get a couple of questions. We'll answer them, and then we'll skedaddle. So,
Cool.
What scene or city do you think contributed the most to your stand-up style?
Ooh, God, I would say Phil. All right, so I lived in Philly. I did stand up only living in Philly for 5 years. Did stand up in Boston for 4 years. Did stand up in LA for 8 or 9. So honestly, it's God, I can't believe I'm going to say LA because that's so disappointing to me. But it is LA. God damn it.
Well, don't be bad because I was saying I think the LA thing is being in the moment and kind of flowing with it, like going around. Like LA comics are much more cool with being hacked. Not saying you're hacked, but you know what I mean? You're like willing to try things that could end up going that way. When Boston was definitely like, do your shit, get the fuck out.
I would say that I think you're right. And then also stylistically, I think personality wise, uh, Philly and Boston, because there is like it's funny, like a lack of patience, not anger, but like like there is like a frustration that like or an alleged aggressiveness. I think that can happen sometimes, but it's not. So it's not like I think LA can be very flowy, and LA has every single like a comedian from every single city there, but like I would say that sometimes in Los Angeles, I was deemed aggressive on stage, you know what I mean? Just because like, which is not what I am. Like, like it's aggressive at LA, like I was like, a Philly too aggressive, but in LA, 50. So it was, but I do think like in terms of being able to like, but if I think I only grew up in LA, I would be the worst comedian of all time. But I think having the foundation of Philly and Boston to be like fucking kill, like get out there, like have a tight act. And because I think it's much better to have something really tight and then like maybe loosen it a little bit in some areas than to start like just like it's I want to do stand up, not a podcast at you. Does that make sense? So I think having jokes is the is the way to do it. But yeah, I think it's all the same. I guess that's probably the most boring answer. But yeah, everything informed everything else.
Yeah, I'm Portland all the way to the core. So
Mm-hmm.
that like some I had a host was like, Nick, can I try doing this? And I go, I would not. But you can do whatever you want. And I was like, that's the most passive aggressive shit I've ever said.
I would I would. Here's the thing. Don't do that.
I said,
But you can.
Do. I would not do that if I
no.
want to continue to work this club. So, do you have any comedy club employees, managers excluded, that stick out in your mind for good, bad, random reason, any reason at all? And can you tell us why? I'll tell you my guy who I always
Please.
say. This guy, I didn't fuck him. His name was Richie, and he worked in the kitchen and he dressed like Marilyn Manson. He was
Yes.
and then best selling was she did a show. He went up to her on a Saturday and he goes, "Hey, I just want you to know I work in the kitchen here, and like for a lady, you were pretty funny."
Oh.
So,
Oh.
because when I think of like the worst employee I could think of,
The worst thing you could, literally the worst thing you could say, like the worst thing to also one of the best comedians, like for a comedian, she's one of the funniest people. For a human being, she's one of the funniest people I've ever seen. Just unobjectionable. Beth Stelling is unobjectionably funny. God, that's so wild. So I have a.
I was more mad that he said I work here. Idiot. Now I gotta fire you, man. You could have maybe like gone, but no, that's.
Hey, I just want to let you know I stole this Helium polo shirt from the back, and I think you're funny for a lady or whatever he said. What a maniac. Yeah.
What about you though? Who you got?
I have like a positive one. So there's a bouncer at Helium who like I loved, and he was just one of these guys who like he used to play football. Like I don't know if he was a linebacker or what he was, or a D lineman. Just this big guy, was like not just one of these guys who was not like overly friendly, like right away. But I think he just deals with so much bullshit. Like you just had to be a human being around him, and then like he would like open up a little bit. But like there was a guy, so he's just this big dude and like very physically intimidating. And there was this kid who like, God, I think he was like a college kid who was like a family friend or something who like I could give less of a shit about. And he was like trying to be funny in a comedy club where I think I was in between shows maybe, and I was like out saying hello to some people, outside of the showroom, like at the bar. And this kid goes, he was like, "Hey Blake, you suck." And then this big physically imposing guy just goes, "Blake, you want me to flip this motherfucker?" Like just says that so loud, and the guy just turned completely white, like just was so afraid. And the bouncer knew what he was doing. He knew that like just flip this guy, I don't know what flipped me. Like it could have been physically toss him. It could have been kick. Whatever it was, the ambiguity of it made it so much more intense. And I was like, no, he's fine. And the guy didn't say anything. It's just one of those things where you can get too familiar, I think, as a human being. And this guy just immediately said, "Do you want me to?" I'm trying to. Charles, I always loved, another bouncer at Helium. Like there's just so many in Philly. There's just so many people like it's interesting too, where you said managers excluded. So many people that I think a thing Helium does a good job with is like how many great people you guys have, and it shows up where the examples that I would give of like, oh, I knew this person when they were a server or an usher, like. And like Revin and Jared, like it's people where like, I could easily say like you guys, but like the server version of you or the usher version of you. But now, you guys are like rightfully so in these, leadership positions and stuff. So it's always people do move, people who should be moving up or want to, like do move up there. So, yeah, there's just so many people like Allie at Helium in Philly, like, Mike Helt, like just so many great, sweet people. You just it's like family. It's like, oh my God, I haven't seen you. They're like cousins, yeah, there's just so many great. I'm trying to think of others, but yeah, it's rarely have I had an issue with anybody.
Okay, this is the last question I have, and it's gonna force me to read a lot. So, do you
Good.
have any linchpin moments in your comedy career, like small decisions, actions, coincidences that led to a significant level up in your comedy? And if none come to mind, are there any decisions you regret making, or at least feel like you should have done differently?
Great question. I would have to the point that or what we were talking about earlier. I would have like earlier in my career been more business like with it. Where whether it's like not even the thing like oh like like it's never like I would like vomit on stage from having like too much to drink or anything. Or your example, piss my pants or like the floor. I would never piss the stage, but should be a term. That should be an industry term. This guy really pissed the stage last night.
The stage, y'all.
But in terms of like like a job where like not even that because that's like extreme, like nothing like that happened, but just being like, oh, before a set, having goals, setting goals before each set, where a goal could be I want to kill as hard as possible tonight because I either like just it's your first week at a new club, you know what I mean, like you're recording something, whatever it is. Or oh, I want to try out, I want to learn this about this joke tonight. Can this joke work in front of this audience? Can this tag work this way? Just really having like an analytical approach to it. And obviously, I mean, people watch my act and they're like, this guy's never thought about a single word he said. But I would if I could do things over again. Obviously I was young too, but there's young people who figure that out sooner than I did. So I would have more of like a business like approach to it. And then linchpin moments too, like, God, just doing a show, like getting that. I think that pandemic show was like such an incredible like lesson too, where it was the last show that I did. It was 6 months ago, but it's like, God, you were able to accidentally record an album outside of a steel mill during a pandemic. It's just a nice thing for all the bullshit that you deal with in this business. Where I was talking to Joe DeRosa about this, and his term is time served, where you put in all this effort, all the bullshit that you have to deal with, and it's like, you know what, here's an easy thing, or here you're getting what you deserve. Like that's time served. And I think mine's like my bullshit tax return, where like I have paid so many taxes into like so many bullshit taxes over the years. Like it's like, oh, okay, it's cool when things work out positively like that. And there's a bunch of things in LA, like, you do a show. I'm a big fan of stand up as well. Like before I started, I would, stand in the back and watch shows. And sometimes my dad would take me or my mom to Helium in Philly. And, I would have to call ahead and be like, hey, I'm here with my guardians tonight. Like just like sit me in the back. Is that okay? And they'd put big X's all over my arms. But, I would, just seeing performing with people that I'm a fan of is a really cool thing. So in LA, like going up after like Bob Odenkirk on a show, or like just like Sarah Silverman, just all these great comics. And I did want to tell one. So like now that I just said a bunch of positive, I want to say that Did you have one more? I want to tell a quick story about my biggest bomb in the world happened in
Yeah.
Portland. But finish this because that was finish your question. Then I'll tell it afterwards.
Oh no, we're good. We are good. I would love
Okay.
to hear that.
Okay. So, um,
Wait,
I was doing a.
wait. Sorry to cut. So, what can people go check you out on? We'll end with the story. You see what I'm saying?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, you're the profession. You're professional as hell. Well done. Well done. Good call. People can see me blakewexler.com, at Blake Wexler on social media. I have a podcast called Blake's Takes, for God's sakes, and all that and all those albums. And then please see me on May 5th. I'm doing Helium on April 14th as well. Like there's like a Philly showcase, and I'm going to be around, Philly and New York the next a while. So I'm around. And then so this story, I always have to like end in some sort of like self-deprecative way because it's like, oh, I've been talking about like all I've learned, and it's like, well, I need to at the end show that I'm a piece of shit in some aspects. So I was doing week of shows with Todd actually at Helium in Portland, and I don't know if you were there, Adam and
2014, right?
Yes.
I was here.
Okay.
For sure.
Then
I
yes.
was just a tour guy.
Okay. Well, then I would not have spoken to you.
Oh,
it's ushers and up for me. So, just
high face me.
Yeah. I just like had a new ID each night, so I didn't have to talk to you. Just keep it. Don't hand it back to me. So I was middling for Todd in Portland. I guess it was 2014. Amazing week of shows. Like literally some of the just every single week, the room was like, every audience was like hot as hell. Like every single show was great. And I was really feeling myself. So I must have been like 25, I think 24 or 25 at the time. And it was one of these kids that you hate, and rightfully so. So after the show, one thing I like to do when I'm on the road is like do local spots, too, where, you meet cool comics during the show, and they're like, hey, like I have a show down the street. And even though you're doing a million goddamn shows that that you're being paid for, you're like, I got to do more. So I told Amy Miller this story. It was her show. And so
Midnight
after
Mike.
The
Midnight Mike, it was on what, Friday nights?
I feel maybe so there was another one, or I don't know how long it lasted. It was at this really cool bar, and I think it was a booked show, and like it was maybe it was midnight. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, where they have the place with the clowns and shit on the walls?
Yes. Okay. So for some reason, I think this one was on a Saturday because I remember this was the last show that I did. So doing 6 or 7 shows was like of killing was not enough. So I'm like, so Todd and Todd's like this, I've learned this from Todd. So, like in terms of going out and checking out the scenes. So we go to do Amy's show, and Amy was obviously sweet enough to have me on it. And she was like, the show was already going on. It was already like 1:15 in the morning. And she goes, oh, like who wants to go last? And obviously Todd is the one who should headline because Todd's Todd Glass and he's a very well-known comic. And I'm like, I'll headline, because in my mind I'm like 25-year-old Blake. I was like, I've crushed all week. It's my turn. So I goes up in the that was great. And there was like Shane Torres was on the show, like all these amazing Portland, like Amy, all these amazing Portland comics, and it's like 1:50 in the morning. And bars like that bar had to shut down at like 2, so it's like do 5 to 7, close it out. And I'm like, I'm gonna murder this. I see a guy in the audience. I'll just say, I never say his name. Like the few times I've told him, it was like Lance Banks, who's like directed a bunch of stand-up specials. He was in the audience, and I'm like, oh, I knew him from Jackass, but he's obviously now this very like successful director. So I went up to him like, hey man, I'm Blake. I'm a big fan of yours. Like, if you're busy, like, obviously don't worry about it, but like, I'm about to go on, like, would you mind hanging out for my set? Which I would never do. And I can't believe that should be the most cringy part of the story. And it's somehow, all these things should already be the most cringy part of the story. So I'm really, it's the first time I had ever felt confidence. Like, this guy never felt confident before. I'm like literally like, hello, here's my business card. How are you? Blake Wexler. Damn fine to meet you. So I go on last because I insisted after these killers, just these great comics. I legitimately did not know where the light was. And I'm bombing. I'm already bombing anyway. So I'm bombing and I'm thinking in my head, like, I need this light. I need this light right now. But I wanted to do my, and I'm already like, God damn it, Blake, you did fucking 7 great shows, and now you have to do now you just had to do one more, you idiot. And I don't. So it's like after 2, it's like 2:10. The bar is gonna be in legal trouble if they don't shut down soon. I'm still bombing on stage. I'm like, people are like, how the fuck is this still? It was, I think, the worst experience of everybody's life watching me do comedy that night. And finally, like, I couldn't find the light. The room was packed. Everybody killed but me. And then Shane Torres had to literally tug on my pant leg from, like, he had to crawl onto the stage and tug on my leg and be like, Mike, you got to get off the stage. And I was like, all right, thanks everybody, good night. And I was like, and oh, this was the best. This part made me feel good. Todd told the entire, and by the way, you know, like, everyone wanted to meet Todd, like all the local comics and stuff. And so there were like 15, 20 people in the green room, and Todd told everybody not to look at me when I came off the stage. which honestly was it made me feel immediately better, where I'm like, all right, at least the bit's happening now, you know, like at least someone's benefiting from this awful set. And literally no one would look at me. It was as silent as my act, and it was unbelievable. Yeah, it was the worst bombing I've ever had in my entire, it was just wall to wall bombing. And yeah, it's but I came back to Portland after that, and I needed to give it a couple years.
I was gonna say, like
things needed to die down. Yeah, cool off.
Oh, that's the worst bomb I've ever heard of.
Oh, it was brutal.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, man. I couldn't appreciate you anymore. And for real, you got to come out to Portland. We got to get you back out here sometime.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait. It'll be so much fun.
All right, Center Stage, thank you for listening. Peace. Dog, I can't believe you bombed that